Welcome to episode 198 of the Forestallover podcast, a weekend to forget and kind of remember, because we've made Europe, but we've obviously dented our hopes big time of Champions League football with a draw against Leicester at home at the City Ground. Joining us there, Dean Jones from Wisconsin and Mark Sutherns, who moonlights on Forest Focus and is obviously an FPL legend as well. But without further ado, let's get into the Forest all over the world stuff. So we've got Mark Cutback, Forest fan from Esperance, Australia. I've been back and forth with him a lot, so shout out to Mark. Chris Walsh, Dubai Trickies, who was very upset this weekend with some of the substitutions. There was a Nottingham Forest bus spotted in Nairobi, Kenya. That is proper Forest all over the world. And a fan comment on the last episode was looking for a game in Tokyo to watch somewhere in Tokyo to watch the Leicester game. I did actually reach out to someone, but didn't get anything back. So sorry about that. And then there's Simon, who runs Forest Bahamas. Shout out to him again and his kids, who are huge fans over in Bahamas. That's Cece and Leo, and their team Skills Bahamas are off to their Inter Miami tournament, no doubt representing with Forest jerseys for the journey. Dean, all the way in Wisconsin, you're joining us following winning a quiz, and part of the prize was to come on this podcast. The other part was the signed ball, which is a much better prize. How are you feeling at the moment after this weekend?
Oh, it was really probably the most deflated I've been after a match. Over here yesterday, it was Mother's Day in the US, so we had a family over and we had things going on, and I just couldn't stop thinking about the match. It's just really disappointing, especially when we got in the lead, for how we've been able to close games out this season, and then just to let it slip. And I almost feel like if we had a Murillo back there in that one-on-one situation, I don't think that's going to happen. I really think we'd have closed that game out, but just really disappointing, because it's kind of like we're not in control anymore, in our own destiny. Like Nuno was saying, it's not in our hands anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, there's going to be positive spin at the back end of this podcast and somewhere throughout, but we got to air our frustrations initially. I did yesterday on one of the post-match in Forest Focus. Usually I'm on with Mark. Mark, how are you feeling? You haven't had a chance to vent at all, so I'll give you that opportunity, but I'll also give you the opportunity to give us some positivity at the back end, because we have made Europe as well. We can't forget that. How are you?
Yeah, much as Dean said, it's the deflation, isn't it? When we went 2-1 up, and we had a good spell for 10 minutes after the second goal went in, and it looked like the most likely outcome was another goal for Forest, and we'd see the game out by 3, maybe even more. And the tide just turned. I think Van Nistelrooy made substitutions and threw on, attacking players to try and turn it around, and it worked. We didn't really cope with that, and the frustration is also that the equaliser, of course, and Dean is right. I don't think if that's Murillo one-on-one with Buonanotte, that's not a goal. I think Murillo just shepherds in wide of the target and doesn't let him get the shot on target. Murato was at fault. It was poor defending, really, in your own penalty area to concede that. And then when we did go to 2-2, we had no answers. Nuno really didn't really have enough on his bench that he could turn to in attacking terms to make a difference. And obviously all the controversies about the Tyrone Awoniyi injury and that substitution when Anderson went off. But the fact remains that, Tyro's getting dug out post-match by a lot of people, and we're on there defending him. I heard you, Chris, defending Tyro, making much the same points as we've said over and over and over again about how he helped us in that first season. The problem is that, Nuno's having to put him in that situation where he is getting criticism, because we've got nothing else. We've got nothing else to turn to get us a goal. And I think that really has found us out at this half of the season.
Yeah, and I suppose, as many have said as well, the squad situation, right? I mean, the fact that Villa and Newcastle can go on those big runs back end of the season, bring in the likes of Asensio or Rashford or Malin, or, Newcastle's case, when they have Murphy and Barnes, they'll have Gordon eventually coming back from an injury to throw in, and more firepower. They have midfielders like Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali who can get goals as well. So it's just difficult without the squad depth to kind of to kind of push. But the biggest disappointment, I suppose, is the fact that we were in such a great position a few weeks ago, and we kind of didn't even need to go on a run. We just needed to sort of chip away. But there has to be room for some perspective, I suppose. Even you look at the last 4 games, we've been poor in most of them, but we still managed to win against Spurs. We lost to Brentford. We took a point at Palace, and then we let it slip yesterday. It's just disappointing because it feels like now that it's out of our hands, we can't take it to the final day, but we technically still can. It's just, I'll throw this one to you, Dean. It's the fact that Villa and Chelsea normally would be playing difficult teams when you look at the fixture list. They're playing Spurs and Man United, and they're not difficult games anymore. Those teams are 16th and 17th. They've all but given up on the league. And 2 of those games are on Friday. So Chelsea and Villa just go, right, we'll go out to these 2 lads who are rotating for the Europa League final, and we'll put them to bed. And then we have to play the game against West Ham. So even if we'd won, I think, yesterday, we'd be under massive pressure just based on the fact that Villa and Chelsea play Spurs and Man United at the right time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you just got to bank on it. We're going to be 4 points adrift going into our game on Sunday. I really think that, I mean, we can't rely now on getting points. I mean, whereas before we had a few bad games, we'd come back and we'd have a good win, or we'd just manage to close the game out and win by 1 goal. We're not doing that anymore. So it's, even if things go our way this weekend, we still have to do the job on the pitch, which we haven't been doing. I mean, our form has been, is it 1 win in the last 7 matches? That's just almost relegation form, you know, like we just, and I think the main issue is, like you said about the squad, Chris. I mean, we're unbalanced without Callum Hudson-Odoi. You take Murillo, that's so dynamic at the back, and you just don't feel as confident defending. When, especially like it showed at Leicester, that one-on-one makes a huge difference. Whereas other teams, like you said, your Newcastles, your Villas, they have, you know, international players coming off the bench that is seamless. I think that's the biggest issue right now. Yeah,
for sure. And obviously, like, everyone's dissected the game and they've kind of spoke about it. I know, Mark, you haven't really had a chance to talk about it. And the one final kind of thing I'll say about the game, and I'm probably sure I've already said this, I thought going forward, we were very good. It's just really upsetting that there's that lapse in judgment at the back again. You know, the confusion with Aina and Malenkovic, I think it was. Then
comical.
And then the first goal, I mean, you got to react quicker. That's basics. You know what I mean? I know we're trying to play offside a little bit from the second man getting in on the goal, but forget that. Like, it's from a long throw and that bounces around. Great save from Sells, and then Connor Cody's in it. I thought we reacted well. It's hard for me, Mark, to point the finger at the team collectively like I would have, against Brentford or Everton, because I don't think the performance was terrible yesterday. There was moments of really good stuff, particularly going forward. Maybe we should have finished our dinner, but I find it really hard. Do you think that, that narrative of Forest have sort of collapsed? Do you think it's kind of a little unfair based on the fact that the second half of the season we have showed character in moments? It's not just been a first half of the season stuff. I mean, the second half of the season we have showed character right up to April.
I think everything that we've achieved to get to where we are, it is very harsh to be critical. But there's no question that we're not performing at a level that warrants us competing for a top 5 place currently. The Brentford and Everton performances at home were 2 of the worst I've seen in terms of home performances, in terms of lack of creativity and ideas. And yes, we did create more against Leicester, but we're talking about a relegated team who most teams will create against. So yes, we played better in attacking terms, and perhaps had we taken a few of the early chances, it would have been a far easier proposition. But I still don't think we're operating as we were, and that's because, as Dean mentioned, the balance of the team has gone with Callum Hudson-Odoi missing. We had him missing earlier in the season, and you saw what that did. It doesn't feel right without Callum there, and the way in which we can break down and create chances isn't the same without that balance, with Alanga one side, Callum the other, Gibbs White in the middle. The minute you take one of them out, it disrupts us going forward, and that was still the case against Leicester. I thought we did create chances, but we're going to against that team. It's harsh to be critical, but I fear that we never set the squad up in January for what was a Champions League challenge, in my opinion. we didn't go into this season expecting to be in that position. And in January, although we were challenging and looking like we could get a top 5 finish, I don't think the recruitment really matched that ambition. And unfortunately, that's caught up. The fact that we've got Hudson-Odoi out and Souza, who was bought to take up a left-sided wing role, isn't called upon, shows that recruitment wasn't right. And Jota Silva, for all his effort and chaos he causes, really hasn't made the impression we need. So those 2 signings, who are meant to add depth, they do add depth to a team trying to stay in the division. They don't add depth to a team trying to finish top 5. So unfortunately, that's caught us up, and we've had injuries at the wrong time, and we haven't had those players to turn to. And a patched up Taiwo, who perhaps will never be the same player that we saw in those first season. That's the only answer we've got with 15 minutes to go to try and get us a goal. And sadly, as we've seen on several occasions this season, he can't do that. So I feel for Nuno, I really do. And I feel for us as supporters and the players, because we were so close, so very close. And unfortunately, our lack of depth and perhaps our inability to act decisively in January, or perhaps go for the wrong targets in January, has just found us out.
So you're very much, Mark, like the January window was, and like I tend to agree, but it's very, as you've mentioned before a few times, it's very difficult to hit the right target in January. Evan Ferguson, I was recommending as a backup for Chris Wood. I still think he's a brilliant player, but he didn't light anything up when he went to West Ham at all. Potter wasn't using him, and West Ham weren't exactly pulling up trees. It wasn't like they couldn't have thrown him in there. So it just felt like it was probably difficult to maybe get the targets we needed. I think we went into that January window thinking, right, we're definitely getting a striker as a backup to Wood. We know Taiwo could be injured or struggled for minutes this season, so we assumed that was going to happen. And when it didn't, I think we were all a bit shocked. But it did work for a while, and we did get lucky with injuries for a while, without injuries, I mean. And I do look back, Dean, at this second half of the season, and I do go, okay, well, we lost to Bournemouth 5-0. We bounced back 7-0 at home. We lost to Fulham and Newcastle. We then bounced back by taking 4 points off Arsenal and City in the same week, then going on and beating Ipswich and Man United. We lost to that Everton game. It was a horrendous game. I was there. A week later, we go to Spurs, and okay, it's a lackluster Spurs this season. But we still had to win. We were missing our fullback. I think Toffolo was playing left back that day. We were all very tired from the FA Cup, which was coming up. So I think we've shown some bounce back this second half of the season. Do you think it's really important now that we just don't end in a disappointment going into West Ham and Chelsea and finish strong?
Yeah, I mean, look at the success of the season. Scoring first and just being tight at the back has been the formula of success all season. I mean, in the last half a dozen games, we've conceded, I think, first in most of those games, and we just don't have the firepower to get back in and score multiple goals. We might get one goal at the weekend. It was 2 goals with a great cross and finish from Chris Wood, but we haven't really looked like scoring lots of goals. I just think that we're kind of falling away, and almost feel like now the pressure is off. We're kind of like the underdogs again. No one's, it's out of our hands, so we say. No one's expecting us to make top 5 now, so maybe that pressure is off, and the players can play with a little bit more freedom. Playing away from home might help as well. There's not as much pressure on from the fans. There's a trickle of boos at the end of the game. I think I was more towards the officials possibly the decisions at the end. But maybe playing away at West Ham might be a good thing. And I know they picked up a good win this weekend, but there's no reason why we can't go there and put it to the last game, which would be fantastic if we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I've seen people online, today's been a bit of a day for reflection. Meltdown yesterday, reflection online today, where Forest fans go, you know what, look how far we've come. And you kind of knew it was coming. You're allowed to have a bit of a tantrum and a meltdown on the Sunday. And then the next day you come back and go, well, actually, it's not so bad. And it kind of doesn't feel as bad as it once did. But to Dean's point, like party atmosphere Sunday should be party atmosphere the next 2 games for sure. We've made Europe, but I think it is important to remember it's not over. Like the season isn't done yet, and we are the underdogs. And maybe, Mark, this has given us a little bit of time, even the last 3 home games in general, a bit of time to come to terms with the fact that it was always going to be difficult, even though we had a cushion. It was always going to be difficult to try and compete with the likes of Villa and Newcastle, who have that squad depth. And it maybe has given us a bit of time to come to terms with that, obviously ending in a horrific way on Sunday, but still, maybe it's given us that time to come to terms with the fact that this was always going to be a difficult challenge. And now we're underdogs again, as Dean said, and it's not over just yet. And we still have a chance of getting sixth and securing that Europa League spot without worrying about Palace in the FA Cup. Do you know what I mean, Mark? Is there a feeling of that today?
Yeah, I think, I think many Forest fans are probably taking stock and saying, which is the reasonable thing to say, well, European football is sealed and we've got that to look forward to. And that is well beyond our expectations of what season we could achieve when we predicted where we'd be at this stage. So I think the reality of that has sunk in, and the achievement of that has sunk in. And I'm personally not expecting too much from the final two games at all. And perhaps that's good, because, I think the players can relax a bit more and hopefully can throw off those shackles if they have been in place of the pressure from being in that position. There's no question, we were favourites to be top five. You look back 4 or 5 games and you look at the fixtures we had, Brentford, Everton and Leicester at home. I was expecting 7 points minimum from those 3 games. So we have, you can paint it and, portray it any way you want. We've thrown it away, really, because had we got just maybe 5 points instead of 7 from those 3 games, we'd be looking at the last 2 and going, well, we've just got to get a couple of draws. And it will definitely be in our hands final day with Chelsea coming to the City Ground. But so we have, unfortunately, we have let it slip. But I think that's a consequence of really nothing has come easy for us this season. We haven't won many games easily, obviously Brighton, but apart from that, we've had to work very hard. We've had to take the lead and defend very stoutly in most games, and most of them have been hard fought. And when you take several key players out of our team and when you don't have options on the bench, it's going to be a lot harder. And so it's proved. And unfortunately, you talk about Spurs and United being the right time to play them. Everton and Brentford probably wasn't the right time to play them, because they both were in a renaissance period, weren't they, in terms of Moyes at Everton getting fantastic results, particularly away from home. We saw them go to Fulham this weekend and do the same. And Brentford, who have just been on an amazing run in their quest for Europe. So we played those 2 teams, which on paper looked like home bankers, or at least we should get points out of them, at the wrong time. And then Leicester, local rivals, love to spoil the party, have done exactly that. So we've been unfortunate maybe in playing those teams when we did, but it's coincided when the squad is looked rather thin and Nuno's options rather limited.
For sure. And I think, to your point, Mark, there was a moment in the season, I'm sure someone else has referenced this, but there was a moment in the season in December to January time where it felt like we were playing all the teams at the right time. Everton were on their backs when we played them away. Wolves were on their backs when we played them away. Spurs were on their backs when we played them on Boxing Day. Do you know what I mean? Like, it felt like we had that moment and that momentum. We weren't getting any injuries. Our team was ticking over. Other teams were kind of drifting in and out. Man United were off form at Old Trafford. It was that kind of thing. It felt like we played those teams at the right time. And now, the back end of the season, we've started to play the teams at the wrong time. And other teams have had their fixtures at the right time. And I suppose that's what a season is. You end up where you deserve to finish at the end of a season, regardless. You can't go on about injuries or timing or whatever. At the end of the day, you end up where you deserve to finish. But yeah, it's interesting because, we will look back at this season as a whole in a year or two and go, oh, what a season. And we'll look at the big moments, but it's so long. It's 9 months. And, you look back at games against Liverpool at Anfield, it seems like a long time ago, or December when we were on that 6-game run. But yeah, I've already kind of turned a corner within a day, and I've had to, because if I didn't, I'd be feeling terrible. But you're right. We ultimately did kind of throw it away, because I've mentioned this before, 57 points, 8 games to go. You'd expect us to get to 69 and not like 12 points or something within the next 8 games. It's maximum 24 points available. You're taking half those points and you probably do it. So that's a difficulty. But obviously, Europe, they're all still on. All the European competitions are still on. But I think right now we've got to just try and push for that 6th spot, which would be a big achievement in itself. And even if we fall to 7th, or we're in 7th now, it would still be a massive achievement, I think. So we've got to push for that Europa League spot. Dean, are you expecting much this weekend against West Ham? I know we're way off form, and it seems like
if we score first.
Oh no!
If we score first, I think we can kick on.
I mean, if we score first, yeah.
And then Murillo's back, and we've got Morato on the bench ready to come and lock it down. We will want to shut the game down. I mean, they've been poor. I mean, they've got a good result last week, but they've been poor all season. With the squad they have, they should be, upper mid-table. I don't know if we can get that. If we started so well against Leicester yesterday. Remember the first 5 minutes we had 1 or 2 really good opportunities to get in front, and that's the difference. Taking those chances and getting that first goal quick, and it kind of builds the confidence, and we can, grow into the game a little bit. But I think once we concede like we've done recently, we're struggling. But like you said about Europe, I mean, we still have a small chance, an outside chance of qualifying for the Champions League. But in hindsight, and after thinking about everything, we're probably better equipped to start in the Europa League and build from there. Like with a squad, even when with lots of new signings, we're still way off competing with all those big sides in the Champions League. It's just the financial side that would be really nice, and attracting players with that and keeping players, making that, that was the biggest thing I wanted. I don't care if we got beat in the, qualifying stages, if we'd have all that money, and signings would be a big positive for Forest.
100%. That's what I mean. I heard, I think it was Matt Davies said it yesterday. It's amazing how, you can go from, we're going to sign all these players, we've got to push for to, we've got to try and keep these players. And it just, the narrative switches within the space of 2 games of, and I think you're right. I think, but that equipped line, maybe we wouldn't be, but I'd take being not equipped. I mean, apparently we weren't equipped for the Premier League, and we just threw it at the wall and stayed up.
True.
Got ourselves into PSR trouble, but still managed to stay up and look where we are now. So I think we would have kicked on. I still think we will kick on. But as you said, it's not over just yet. This weekend, if we beat West Ham, we can take it to the final day. Mark, West Ham, Bowen, Souček. I mean, apart from that, they've been awful this season. That 2-0 win could spark something, even though it's against an awful Man United team. But it's their last home game of the season. That they will want to go out. They're not quite on the beach yet, are they, Mark?
No. I think really we're probably playing West Ham for the wrong time as well. I mean, it was an impressive win at Old Trafford, and Bowen has been finding the net with regularity now, isn't he? He'll cause us issues. Kudos, of course. Souček coming from deep. Ward-Prowse is in the side, and it would be bittersweet if he was a factor in a West Ham win. I'm if Murillo's not on the team sheet, I'm not totally confident we can go there and get a positive result. If he is, then yes, the script is there for us to take the lead and then hold out. But I think as we've seen, if West Ham get the early goal, we don't have too many answers to that. We don't look like scoring and turning a 1-0 deficit around away from home. But maybe we'll be proved wrong. Maybe with the pressure off and the players liberated from that expectation, because I think they are. I think we all are. I think we're all like, well, we're very, very content with European football. Let's look at that as a positive, and I'm sure that'll be the message that Nuno sends. It's like, if the players were feeling pressure, and I think they were. I mean, you can speculate that Nuno was shielding them from it. He was saying all the right things in the press, but there's no doubt that the players would have had that on their mind. They were looking at results, and they would have felt the pressure. You can see them falling to their knees on the final whistle against Everton, Brentford, and again at the weekend. They know the opportunity they had, and so they would have felt that. Hopefully they can turn that around to a positive, and we can go and get 3 points at West Ham. But it's not going to be an easy game at all.
No, it won't. And I think you're right. I think West Ham will still try and get a positive victory in that game, finish the season strong so they can go into pre-season and Potter can rebuild. And, I think they do have the talent. It is, a tough enough away game despite how poor they are. But I suppose the one thing I'll say is our away form lately has been okay. We beat Spurs. We drew a Palace away. This is a Palace team that blew away Spurs the other day. They're in an FA Cup final. They're full of confidence, full of beans. That game against us, they didn't rest anyone. They needed it as a tune-up for the FA Cup a couple of weeks later. So we did very well. We responded well to a penalty disappointment in that game and scored to come back in that. So I think our away form's kind of been okay. It's just what sort of Forest at this point in time turn up. And like you said, Mark, the pressure has been getting to the players, but I think that pressure might be off now. And we just hope they can go out and do it. I just really don't want this to be a season that sort of trickles out. And even though we've made European football for the first time in 30 years, we're feeling disappointed until we come back around to August when we look back and go, actually, wow, that was a really incredible season. And Dean, I know I spoke to you before we came on here, and you just seem so deflated. And, well, even just a positive performance this weekend would give us something going forward into the Chelsea game as well. Chelsea have a final 3 days after that. We've got to remember, that'd be good for us, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to take it to the last game of the season with a packed Forest with hot atmosphere. I think that would be interesting. I mean, it could be 3 or 4 teams that can still make the top 5 in the last game. I mean, this could be a lot of pressure on teams, even teams that so-called have the easier games. Nothing's going to be easy in the last game. We've seen that in the past. I think if we can somehow get 3 points this weekend, a positive result gives a bit of confidence going into the last game and still having a chance to sneak into the top 5 on the last day would really rub it in the noses of all those pundits have written us off all season, basically.
I think it already has. I think a lot of them predicted us to get relegated at the start of the season.
Yeah,
and we've already surpassed achievements, but
True.
It's that feeling of mixed emotions where we all know that we were in a great position to do something incredibly special and get Champions League and big money, and then at the same time we've kind of slipped out of that and drifted away at the last. But I think obviously you've got to take the positive of we got ourselves in such a great position that even with the fall away, we end up in 7th minimum. And I think that had we not had, it's not a think, obviously, factually, if we'd not put ourselves in that great position, if we'd not sort of bounced back and beat Man City and beat Man United or bounce back and beat Brighton, we could be scrapping around for 8th, 9th, 10th, where Brentford, Brighton and Bournemouth are right now. And Brentford have a couple of easy games the last of this season. So that would be really difficult. My fear was when we started to see this collapse was maybe if it goes the wrong way, we keep drifting, and we haven't, which is the only sort of positive to take, even though we're all very gutted and deflated for sure. We'll talk a little bit about the Marinakis stuff because I don't think Mark has had a chance to. I don't think Dean has had a chance to. And I know everyone else has talked about it. My opinion really quickly on this, Mark, is when Matt Davies asked me yesterday, I hadn't seen it. Then I look back at it. For me, okay, he's on the pitch, and obviously I've seen that before, and yeah, I'm unsure whether that's always a good idea. The media will jump all over that, but ultimately, I didn't see it as big a deal as the media made it out to be initially. He sort of went past Nuno initially and then came back to him. Everyone's sort of blown it up as this. He was having a go at Nuno, and I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think they have a bit more of an understanding of their relationship than that. But yeah, it gave the media some bait, which is disappointing. But I don't think it's as bad as everyone's saying, or am I a bit naive, Mark?
No, I think in 24 hours later, I've come to a similar conclusion. I think after the game, I was really concerned that he was on there venting his frustration at Nuno's decision making, perhaps, or just the reality of the fact that we've only got a single point for the last 3 home games when it looked like we should get more. As it turns out, he was specifically venting his frustration at the Arani situation and the fact that we used our last sub to take Anderson off for Jota. And had we known that Arani couldn't continue, we wouldn't have had 10 men for those final minutes. And who knows what difference that could have made. And I totally understand it. I think, for the record, I think there's been 1 or 2 incidents involving the medical team that probably deserve a bit of a post-mortem, in that we had Hudson-Odoi injured against Brentford early in the first half, and then he didn't get substituted, and it wasn't until half-time when he fell to his feet, fell onto the floor and was subbed at half-time that we made that change. I was watching that game. You could see after 20 minutes he was gone, and I don't really understand why we didn't make that substitution. Why weren't the medical team asking him, can he play on? Murillo at Palace felt his hamstring. It was another 15 minutes when he volleyed the ball away and he had to go off. Now, if it turns out he's out for the season, that's another incident where why didn't we react to him feeling his hamstring? We all saw it on the footage. Were questions asked? Should Morata have come on earlier? Would that have meant Murillo would have played at the weekend? So when you throw in the Aroney one as well, I think questions do need to be asked. Something's awry, something has gone on. And when you're trying to compete for top 5, those little things, although they're marginal, you need them to be correct. You need to make the right decisions at the right time, and you need people in that situation who can make those decisions. And I would say there are 3 decisions there that we've got wrong in the space of 4 or 5 games that may have cost us points. So when you look at that, yeah, perhaps that's in Marinakis' mind, but there's no question for me he shouldn't have done it in the way he did. You know, he's got to try and put a lid on his emotions, and I know that's perhaps very difficult, and in the culture of Greek football you don't have to do that, and you can go on the pitch and you can show your emotions and let your opinion be heard. But it fed the press, it fed the media, and it led to a circus afterwards, and that detracted from our achievements of European football, and that probably wasn't a positive. But I do, 24 hours later, you know, given the incidents that I've listed, understand the frustration that something is wrong there, and it's not just one mistake, I don't think.
Yeah, interesting stuff about the physio stuff there. It's funny. We all know that happened. We all know that the Hudson-Odoi incident happened at Brentford. We all know about the Murillo one. I saw the same thing you saw, Mark and Dean. I saw Murillo kick that up, feel his hamstring initially, and then, you know, he went for another ball and it went a bit there. So it's interesting. It's not even a theory. It's just the facts. There's a couple of questionable calls there from the physios. I'm not calling the physios out, but you're right. There does need to be a bit of a post-mortem there, because it's culminated in the most important parts of our season, missing 2 of the most important players, and then the back end of that Leicester game with Taiwo as well. So yeah, interesting points on that. Regarding Marinakis, the longer I think about it, the more I don't mind it. I don't want the press having a media circus around. I don't want the pressure going back on the players and the coach when things like this happen and when he does go on the pitch. But I'm just kind of like, you know, we've seen lots of people online, Man United fans, say, well, the Glazers don't care about our team. Look at Marinakis, he does care. And I know that's an easy way to sort of dress it up, but I do like the passion. Maybe it's because I'm quite an emotional, passionate person myself. And I definitely don't like the way the media jump all over it. It's like low-hanging fruit. It's like a bad comedian, you know? That's, for me, it's just like, it's really obvious. And people like Danny Murphy and Simon Jordan were rightly brought the big picture back to the fact that Forest have made European football. So those two I saw recently do a really good job at saying, look, the bottom line here is the big picture is Forest have made European football. Okay, the owner's upset about this physio thing, but it's not as big a deal as everyone's making it out to be. Dean, what are your thoughts on it briefly?
Well, when it originally happened, I actually always sync up Radio Nottingham when I'm watching the feed over here, because the commentary is not always that great and the pundits aren't great. So Colin Frey was saying that, you know, they're having a bust up Marinakis and Nuno, and I was like, oh, what's happening? So I had to find a clip of it, and I thought the same as Mark. He didn't directly go to Nuno. He was actually heading towards the middle of the pitch. Like I said, I'm assuming he's going towards the physios to ask him the question. And Nuno stopped him in his tracks, and they were having a conversation. It wasn't even that heated, really. I think Nuno kind of calmed him down a little bit. He's probably the only person that could calm him down at that point. I don't think anyone else tried to stop him when you see him trekking towards the field. But us as Forest fans, we've seen him boil over at certain points, and the media love it. You know, they jump all over it and they try and make a big deal out of it. And again, at the end of the day, it kind of tarnishes the bigger picture of us qualifying for a European competition for the first time in 30 years. It's just kind of lazy journalism, I think. And as far as the mix-up at the end, all I can think is that when the physios were putting thumbs up, were they thinking, Jota, yes, put Jota on for Taiwo? That's all I can think. Like, why would they put their thumbs up twice? I mean, Taiwo was sitting on the ground at one point and he had his thumbs up. Was he thinking, I mean, they're all linked up, you know, with mics to the bench. I mean, I don't understand how that happens. I mean, how can that happen when you've got your last sub coming on and then Taiwo can't even stand? I mean, as soon as he walked on, it was just, he couldn't even move, could he?
He was up and down twice as well, and up and down. And for me, I know I'm seeing it on TV screen, and I know it's difficult to get across a big stadium with 30,000 people in it. But I was looking at it and going, surely just put Silva on for him, leave Anderson on.
Yeah,
just just do that. Like that for me, I was like, and then I saw Nuno give the thumbs up, and it was almost as if he'd received a thumbs up. And they have little earpieces, don't they, as well, with communication. Exactly. I had no idea what we were doing, and I knew straight away that it was a mistake. And if I knew, I mean, obviously again TVs, but like Jesus, it's just
a massive mistake.
Massive mistake. As Mark says, there's a string of them now, and you it is something, definitely a talking point for sure. Maybe even more of a talking point than Marinakis being on the pitch.
Well, you saw Nuno's face as looking around at the bench as soon as he came on.
Yeah,
he was barely moving, wasn't
he? Yeah, it was mad. Right, Mark. Obviously, you're going to do your post-mortem of the season at the back end. I'm sure you'll be on Forest Focus. You and I have been on Forest Focus together a few times at the end of really tough moments and during some really great moments. I think we've been on when we've sort of last season had some really big struggles against the likes of Bournemouth late, and this season a few games. But we've come a long way, and I know that you won't want to do your final season wrap-up conversation till after West Ham and Chelsea, but right now, in the moment, after the disappointment, the dust hasn't settled yet, but we've still got 2 games to go. We're still fighting on all fronts. We've confirmed European football. The 7th could be a Conference League spot. It might not be. It might end up being Europa. We want to try and get 6th, and we can still potentially get top 5 if Villa feel the pressure, which I don't think they will, but if they do, or Chelsea, or both. It needs to be both, doesn't it? But what's your sort of takeaway right now in the moment for the season?
I think it's I want it to be a season that sets the foundations for the future. I think that if someone said to me, do you want Champions League, but it means you're going to get relegated in the next 5 years, I'm not sure I would take it. Whereas someone said to me, well, I'll give you Europa Conference, but you're staying up for the next 20 years, I'd take that, right? So the most important thing for us is that we build the foundations for a long stay in the Premier League, in the top division, at the top table, where we can compete for Europe, compete for cups, compete for the top players. That's the most important thing. And I hope that this season is that it is the foundation for a long stay in the Premier League, and it is the foundation for us to make clever, wise moves in the transfer market to boost the squad enough for us to withstand the Europa League campaign. I am worried when you look at United and you look at Spurs and you listen to Ange giving his excuses for why Spurs have lost 20 games, and he's citing the Europa League and the FA Cup run. That's going to be us next year. We're going to be in the Europa League, and there's expectation on us to actually go deep into that competition. That worries me, because we will have to have a squad to rival that of Spurs and United's to do that, and to make sure we're not, in 16th and 17th like they have been. So we've got a lot of work to do in the summer, and I hope that the European qualification gives us the platform to get the right players in. We've got to make some very good decisions, and quite a few of them in the summer, to put ourselves in a position where we can keep our head above, those positions. We do not want to be competing with the likes of Burnley and Leeds down there next season. We want there to be a comfortable gap between us and that situation. And at the same time, we want to compete in Europe. So expectation would have changed, and expectation with Marinakis would have changed as well. Hopefully lessons are to be learned. I know Nuno wants to work with a small squad, but I think things have moved on since his days at Wolves, and Chelsea have shown, they've been playing a completely different 11 in Europe, and lo and behold, they're in the final and they look like they're going to get top 5. You need a bigger squad, and I think that Marinakis hopefully will activate the recruitment team to go out and achieve that for us, because we're going to need it next season. So I'm optimistic. I don't really mind how the last 2 games go. I'm already looking to next season. I'm already looking to the summer. And my heart sank when I saw Marinakis and Nuno going at each other, because what I really want is Nuno given more time to build on what he's achieved this season with more players in the squad, and to build on the Gibbs, White, Hudson-Odoi, Elanga. They're all going to get better next season. Hopefully, Elanga, Gibbs, White, Murillo all stay, and we can build on it. And like I say, set the foundations of many, many years in the Premier League, and many, many years pushing for Europe.
Good man. And you're right. And, I think the thing that I've taken from what you said there is we want to build and build and build. We don't want to be scrapping around down there. The last 2 seasons, the three teams that have come up and gone down straight away are struggling. We don't want to go back down to that. We don't want to be involved in that fight anymore. I think we were the last hurrah with Bournemouth and Fulham. All three clubs came up and have stayed up and done very, very well. So you're right. I think it's all about building now. And yeah, the squad thing, Mark, 2-11s. Look at Aston Villa. They're able down the stretch to chuck on. They made some very wise business in January. Getting rid of Duran, I thought was a mistake. I'm an idiot because they signed 4 or 5 players in Garcia, Malin, Rashford, etc., Asensio. So, and that has really held them together through European competition and an FA Cup semi-final, and then onto this push for top 5, which looks like they might get, but they haven't got it yet. Dean, we, at this point, about 3 years ago, everyone's going to talk about it. We were a breath away from staying in the championship in Wembley, final, own goal, got us up. It was 2022. It feels like an age away now. But it's nice to be in May in 2025, looking at Europe secured, building for next season. Some really top quality elite players in our team already. If we have to sell 1 or 2, they'll go for massive money or they'll stay, which will be positive. How are you feeling about that?
I mean, after the last 2 seasons in the Premier League, every week we're looking at Luton Town scores and are we going to stay in by goal difference by 1 point? We're just happy staying in the league and maybe winning a few cup games. And now the tables are turned. I mean, at the start of the season, I think if you ask any Forest fan if you'd finished 14th, 15th in the league and a little bit of a cup run, that'd have been a progress from the last 2 seasons. I mean, look at our worst finish this season is going to be 7th. Probably if we don't win the next couple of games, we'd finish 7th. And that's still, if Man City win the FA Cup, that still could be a Europa spot. I mean, you wouldn't even think about that. I mean, I was a teenager last time I was in Europe and I was going away at Lyon and Auxerre. I can remember those games. And I thought we'd be doing that every year. And it's been 30 years since I went there. So I'm really excited, and I'm just going to have to really think of excuses to get out of work and an international flight on a Wednesday or a Thursday night and get back for Monday for work. So that's a problem I'm willing to have. I think that just with the squad, like we said, we've been very lucky with injuries for most of the season, and it just shows how thin our squad is and how Nuno doesn't trust certain players. I mean, yesterday he didn't make a sub till the 70th minute. I mean, if you've got players that are going to be like for like, he probably would have made them a little bit earlier when Leicester made their adjustments. I mean, like Mark said, if the last 2 seasons any tell of the teams coming up, possibly Leeds, they're possibly going to pump lots of money into their team. Would they be a bit more competitive? Burnley, if they're going to try and play the same way, they're going to struggle again. And whoever comes up in the playoffs, I don't think it's going to be another Southampton situation, possibly. So really, I mean, if we can try and build to be a top 10 minimum team from now on and attract, I think we will be attracting better players now. They've seen that we're not a relegation squad at this point. And like Mark said, if we do sell 1 or 2 key assets and raise more money, and then with the Europa money or possibly Champions League money, our squad's going to look a lot stronger next year and be able to progress and hopefully kick on and try and be competitive again. I mean, 2 years in a row. There's no reason why we can't.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we have an ambitious owner, and that's a positive thing. And, before I let you guys go, one thing I'll say is there's always a lot of noise online. There's a lot of fans versus fans. You see Arsenal, they got to the Champions League semi-final, they did brilliantly against Real Madrid, and then they have fans come and go, but you've got no trophy, it doesn't mean anything. And Spurs and Man United go, well, if we win the Europa and we go to the Champions League, it's a better season. But deep down, even Man United's manager said it's an embarrassment of a season for them so far, and they both know the league is bread and butter. And I think we'll have a lot of fans sort of clashing on, Forest collapsed a bit and Villa and Newcastle just got in, or whatever it may be. But I think just forget all that, because ultimately Forest this season, we will never forget this season. And we might remember some of the disappointment at the end, but we'll never, ever, ever forget this season. It's the best season we've had in 30 years. So we're not going to forget it. And a lot of teams this season, or the so-called top six will forget their seasons. They'll want to sweep them well under the carpet and move on. There's only a couple of teams in the Premier League, the likes of Newcastle, Liverpool, who feel like they've overachieved or achieved something massive this season. Even City will want to forget this season. Forest won't. And I think that's something that we should always stand by, is this is a memorable and happy season for us, despite how it ends. And it's not over yet. As you said, Dean, we've 2 games left. It's not done just yet. Mark, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate you jumping in last minute.
No worries. Sorry, I'll get the mic camera working next time, but hopefully I was okay. Came across all right.
Oh, you were great, mate. You were great. I've been on Forest Focus with you a couple of times, and you always pick up the slack for me when I'm not doing so great. So I appreciate it, especially when emotion is written all over my face. You come in with the stats. So, no, fair play to you. Good man. Thank you, Dean, all the way from Wisconsin. Really appreciate you jumping in. From there, you're 6 hours behind us, I think, so it's different time zones. Do you want to give a shout out to anyone?
Just the NFFC, NA branch, just all over the US. Fantastic organization. And Andrew Cove.
Yeah, legend.
Friend of the pod, right?
Absolutely. Andrew Cove's an absolute legend. He sort of runs NFFC NA, and there's a lot of people over there. Obviously, when I was in Toronto, I was with the Toronto Trickies for a bit. There's New York and Dan White and Jordan Thielen, and there's lots of people part of that. Carl Hudson, Chicago, Brian, loads of people over there, part of the big organization. Homer in Ohio, and it was in Ohio, the meetup you had recently. So, yeah, massive shout out to NFFC NA. They're just class act. And yeah, thanks a million. Appreciate it, Dean. Appreciate it, Mark. And a big shout out. No worries at all. And a big shout out to Dave Sanders, who had a red hot take at the beginning of the year. Around August, he sent it online, and I thought it was a joke. He said, my red hot take is Wood's going to get 20 goals, and we're going to finish top 10. And we've done both those things. So we could be happy about that. Thanks very much.